Hi everyone, Kendall here, and what I have for you today is our Brackman Sampler Sew Along, block number 9. Oh my god, so after this week we only have 3 weeks left, but I think I'm going to continue on a weekly basis just making block videos from the book, but I'll decide where they're going to come from. Without much further ado, let's spin that wheel and see what this week's block will be. Week number 9. What will the wheel give us for this week? Block number 1611. Brackman ID 1611 gives us a block that has been known by 2 different names that Barbara was able to find. The first one being 5 Patch by the Ladies Art Company. The Ladies Art Company was founded in St. Louis by H.M. Brockstead, and it is credited as the first mail-order quilt pattern company. Exactly when they first published their catalogue, diagrams of a quilt, sofa and pincushion patterns, has not been determined. A 1895 ad mentions 272 patterns. The 1906 edition included 450 designs, and a second catalogue, Quilt Patterns, Patchwork and Applique, was published in 1922 and revised again between 1928 and 1934, with patterns numbering 531. This last catalogue was published until the company went out of business in the 1970s. The second name this one has been known by is The Glorified 9 Patch by Evelyn Brown. This was published in Tumbling Alley, a periodical from around 1970 to 1981. Evelyn also wrote and published Quilting, Do It My Way, in 1975. For this week, I thought I would switch around the colours, as you can see from this image on screen now, but this block was originally designed to be only 9 inches. It was a little bit difficult to size this up to 12 inches as is, as the little squares that make up the 9 patches on the corner there needed to be cut at a really weird measurement. So I kept the block at its original 9 inches, and I've just added a border with cornerstones. So, let's get to it. So here we have all of the pieces and parts needed to make my version of this block, and you'll notice that we have a few strips there. Instead of cutting all of the little 1.5 inch squares, I thought that we could do those units with strip piecing, and it just gives your hands a little bit something bigger to hold on to. What I'm doing here is matching up all the pieces that do need to go together. So B with G, C with F, which we can put off to the side. A doesn't come into it till final block construction. E and I make one lot of strips, and D and H make the other strip set that we need. Now for D and H, you will have two of the D strips, and for E and I, you will have 2 of the I strips. So we're going to start by putting our B and G rectangles together, just a 1/4 inch seam, and we'll press towards the darker of those 2 fabrics. We'll then start to make those strip sets, so we'll join 1 strip D to 1 strip H, and 1 strip E to 1 strip I. Just to repeat what I said before, we will now press all of these to the darker of the two fabrics. I don't do that with my small strip set. I, for some silly reason, press it towards the background fabric. So don't do what I do. Press everything towards the darker of the two fabrics. We now need to take this longer unit that we've created with the background strip on either side of our print, and we need to cut this into 8 units that are 1.5 inches wide. So if you start with we start with 12.5 inch measurement here, and we only need 12 inches in total to get 8 1.5 inch units. So trim it first of all down to that 12 inches and then subcut all 8 of your 1.5 inch segments. We'll then take the other shorter strip unit that has the 2 print fabrics on the outside of a background, and we only need to cut 4 of those units. To ensure the accuracy of these units, take a reference line from the ruler and run that along the seam line, and I don't worry too much if the strip set doesn't measure the exact amount it is, which is why I'm not giving you that measurement. You just need to make sure that these 1.5 inch units are as accurate as possible. So constantly line up one of the markings on the ruler with that seam line and the whatever measurement you're using for your 1.5 inches. So I start at 12, I go to 10.5, to 9, to 7.5, to 6, to 4.5, to 3, and finally a 1.5 inch cut. And that way I know I'm always referencing off what I know is a straight edge. We'll take these 4 units that we just created and pair them up with 4 from the original 8 that we cut, and take those to the machine and stitch our 1/4 inch. We then need to press this seam, and this is where I figured out that I did all my pressing wrong, so don't pay too much attention to that, okay? Ignore the man behind the microphone. Well, actually, no. Don't ignore the man behind the microphone, because that's me now. Just ignore what my hands are doing on the screen, all right? If you pressed everything towards the dark, everything will nest nicely here. So we're going to make these pairs here, and then we need to attach the final strip on the other side to create our 9 patches. I do open up these seams as I'm going along, and you'll see that from the footage. So because I pressed those seam allowances incorrectly when making the strip set, I'm just going to set those in the way that I want them on all of these units now, and I am actually going to open up that seam allowance and spin the intersection. You don't really need to. When it is a straight intersection, you don't have that much bulk there, but I just prefer to open it up, so I just give it a little bit of a twist. That breaks those few stitches that are on the outside of that seam allowance, and I can press this down. I'll do that for all 4, and then we do need to add our remaining units to the other side of this, making sure that we sew it to the right side. So with that one on the top left hand corner of my cutting mat, we'll put the other strip on the bottom to make that 9 patch. Okay, and then we'll open up those seam allowances as well. Okay, so with all of those units made, we can lay out the center of this block, or in essence what this block is, in its 9-inch format. So I'm just testing with my fingers there to see which way the seam allowances are going so that I can get nesting. We won't get nesting when we go to do our horizontal seams. So I could have pressed the middle block differently. So what I'm doing here is laying out this 9 patch with all the units. So we'll bring in our background square A, and then we'll sew this with 9 patch construction by doing all of our vertical seams and then our horizontal seams. For the best results with pressing on the top and the bottom row, we'll press in towards that strip unit with the 2 pieces. And on the middle row, we can press out towards those bar units as well. When we come to do our horizontal seams though, those 2 bar units on the center row, because they're pressed to the dark fabric, they're going to clash with the dark fabric from the 9 patch. So I give it a little snip and I just push it the other way, as you know that I'm prone to doing. So as I stated before, with our vertical rows now done, we will press the top and the bottom row in towards our 2 strip unit there. And on the center row, we'll also press out towards those strip units. Now it's at this point, you could change the direction of the one on the bar unit, but like I said, when I come to do the horizontal rows, I'm just going to snip into that seam allowance, so into but not past the stitching, and just push the seam allowance in the opposite direction to get that intersection to nest. With the first of our horizontal seams done, we'll press this towards the center of the block. So this row that has the least amount of pieces, so not towards the 9 patch units. And you'll see there how I clip that seam allowance just to move it in the direction I want it. We'll do this final horizontal seam and press that in exactly the same way. We now just need to bring in our 2 remaining pieces that were cut earlier, C and F, and these just go around this block to give it a little bit of a border with some cornerstones so that we can get it up to that 12-inch size. Again, I'm really sorry that this won't be in keeping with the rest of our blocks and being an even 9 patch. But this is the only way I could think to get this block done without having to cut really weird sizes or do FPP again for our corner 9 patches in the original block. So just to keep it to our 12-inch finished, I'm just adding this 2-inch border all the way around, and this just goes together like a 9 patch. So on the top and the bottom row where we've got those print squares, press those towards the sashing strip, and then The sashing strips that actually go either side of the block, press those out, and then once we attach that top and bottom row, we'll press out towards that sashing also. And just like that, our block for this week is done. Once again with a symmetrical block, and this is the original as per the book. This is what it would look like on repeat, just with the blocks side by side. With the colouring that I did for this pattern, it does look a little bit different. There's a lot more openness and draws your eye into it. You could also alternate with the two different colorings, and the secondary pattern creates those checkerboards in between them all, and I think that is quite effective. With the alternating colorways and some sashing added, this is what it would look like, and I think that's all right if you had lots of different colors to work with. For the block that we did make today, here it is on repeat with some extra sashing and cornerstones as well, and I think that is quite striking. Thank you everyone for joining me again this week, and I apologize that today's video and a few of the upcoming ones won't actually have full AccuQuilt cutting instructions because there was nothing that I could figure out to do that. So I hope that that's okay, but where I can, I will give you the parts and pieces that you can use and cut with your AccuQuilt. If you haven't done so already, I'd love for you to like the video, share it with a friend, subscribe if you haven't already done so. But most importantly, when you subscribe, tickle that little bell icon and you'll be notified of all my future releases. Okay. Bye for now.